Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kevin Lee Social. Thank you for tuning in. What initially began as an 8-part series interviewing entrepreneurs to share and inspire how they've successfully pivoted during COVID-19, I have decided not only to continue this series, but also to expand on the scope to understand and learn about people's craft, philosophy, the challenges they face in the industry, and their favorite failures that have helped shape them to become who they are today. By going deeper and understanding different thought leaders, businesses, and industries, the idea is to help cross-pollinate ideas applicable in your life and inspire action in this new norm we live in. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Before we get on with the show, today's podcast is sponsored by Altitude Tea. Altitude Tea specializes in rare and exotic teas you can't find on supermarket shelves. Teas grown on high altitudes are more nutrient-dense due to the cold nights and misty peaks that slows the growth of the tea plant, leading to a higher concentration of aromatic oils and richer flavors. They are located in Waterloo and they do private tea ceremonies where you can learn how to drink tea mindfully using a traditional gongfu set and have over 20 varieties of tea to choose from. For our listeners, you can use the code BEYOND at checkout for 15% off. Today, we have Elizabeth Novogratz. She's the founder and president of Species Unite, a non-profit media project to help people transition off animal products. She was called at an early age to devote her life to elevating all animal life after witnessing inhumane animal agriculture and trade in the US and abroad. After a decade of travel into places most of us could not, she founded Species Unite, a non-profit that brings the brightest people and best non-animal products together on one curated media platform. Elizabeth is also the co-founder of Maloka, a virtual reality meditation game that's bringing mindfulness to the metaverse. In an earlier life, she spent over a decade creating and propagating content to help people make healthier lifestyle choices. She co-founded and served as editor-in-chief of The World Daily, a website and daily email that brought wellness, meditation, and health to humans everywhere. She co-authored Wall Street Journal Book of the Month, Just Sit, a meditation guidebook for those who know they should but don't. As a writer, producer, founder, and creative, Elizabeth is committed to changing the story for animals. Everyone, please help me welcome Elizabeth Novogratz. Hi, Beth. How are you today?
Hi, Kevin. I'm really good. It's early in the morning in New York. I am on semi-vacation at the beach. It's nice.
So semi-vacation, you say?
I'm not home, but I'm at the beach, but I'm still working. So it's like a mix. Yeah.
Thank you so much for jumping onto this podcast. I really appreciate your time and effort. I have, ever since I've come across Species Unite, I've wanted to get you on, and I've loved collaborating with you ever since we've gotten started, but we can get more into that later. For the audience, Beth, if you can share your journey about how you became a huge advocate for animal rights. We'll start with that, and we'll get into the meditation part later.
Okay. So for animals, I was one of those kids that just loved animals. And when I was 13, we lived in Germany. My dad was in the army, and nobody I knew in Germany talked about not eating animals or anything. It was way back in the day, and I had no information. But I walked into my biology class one morning, and it was like the day to dissect baby pigs. And I loved animals. So I knew it was in my subconscious, I don't want to participate in anything bad to animals. But when I saw the pig fetuses, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. And I said to the teacher, I was like, I'm a vegetarian, I have to leave. And I wasn't. But after that day, that was it. I never ate meat, chicken, or fish again. But I wasn't so much like this, animal rights person at that point. I was 13 and I didn't know anything. I just knew I didn't want to eat them. It still took me a long time to become vegan after that, and a long time to really do anything be more vocal about anything. But that was the beginning.
And how did Species Unite then spark out of that passion?
And so at the time when I started Species Unite, which is really not that, I think we started in 2018, but it was very in and out. We became a nonprofit right at the beginning of the pandemic. So the kind of real Species Unite, where we do a lot of different things, has only been 2.5 years. But previous to that, for decades, I traveled a lot. I've always traveled a lot. And no matter where I'd be in the world, I wonder who's helping the elephants here. And so it was always my side mission, no matter where I was. I'm going to go meet the people who are like fighting dog meat. I'm going to go meet the people who are fighting this. And I was just like in absolute awe of so many people who were really like just quiet heroes all over the world. And so when I originally was starting it, it was really about the people. I was like, everyone should know that these people exist because so few people know about them, and they've literally given their lives to whatever species or whatever cause and doing these massive things that no one really knew about, or very few people. And so that was where it like sparked. But as I got into it and was literally like showing up everywhere to meet different people fighting different issues, one of the first things I learned, and I learned this the hard way as well as learning about sound the hard way, was I was like, not only do I need everybody to know about these people, but I need everybody to know every horrible, like atrocious thing we are doing to animals across the planet. And what I learned was nobody wants to know that. Very few people want to hear about torture. Very few people want to hear about like mass cruelty. And so it went from this like very like loud screaming, stop, look what we're doing, to how can we focus on solutions? And now we still talk about bad things happening, but solutions are, people want to hear about solutions. Solutions are positive. People like, if you give people like really good vegan food, even they're big meat eaters, that's way better than if you sit there talking to them about the horrors of factory farming. But I think I learn everything like the hardest way possible. Like I have to just do it wrong, and then I start learning how to do it or do it better. Not right. And so with that too,
that's the best way to learn. I think you can't. Like, I love your method because you jump into it, and I feel like I'm a little bit like that as well. You jump straight into it quick, get started, and then make all the mistakes, and then get better at it, rather than sitting on the sidelines, procrastinate, just cheer on the sidelines until it happens, because we have to try to make it happen.
And and like stuff like reading about it or research or all the stuff you maybe should do a little bit of. I don't. It's so much, but I also don't really learn that way. Like I don't think I ever have. I learned from failing, like in my face. Oh, wow, that was horrible. I'm humiliating myself sometimes, but it stinks. And if I read and read, but it's still not going to help me more than going out and doing it. Yeah.
Yes. And I've seen Species Unite. I think it's such an amazing media platform and community to make an impact in fighting for animal rights. As you said, you've traveled around the world and you meet with people who are in the midst of fighting real world issues. Are you able to share a few stories with us that you've had?
Well, I'll tell you how it started. So I was in Thailand at this dog rescue, and for a couple of weeks, and it was all street dogs, and most of them were super abused and had some of like acid poured on them, and they'd been hit by cars and they'd been beaten. And this dog came in, and his front leg was falling out, like dangling. It got removed shortly after.
No.
And he was like just this little cute street dog. And I just fell in love with him. And so my job every day for a couple of weeks was to take care of 25 dogs and like teach them how to use leashes, because they were all going to get adopted outside of, mostly to like Canada, US, Europe. But this dog couldn't walk. So I like carried him with me all over the place, and he'd wait for me. And I fell in love with him. And so when I was leaving to go back to New York, my dog at home is like this super athlete who goes hiking all the time, and she's a runner. I was like, what am I going to do? Bring this dog back and leave him at home all the time? And then my dog is going to be like, see ya. And I was like, I can't take him. So I left money for his flight and help him get adopted, get out of there. 6 months later, he's gone. He's off their website. And a few months after that, I see a picture of this guy, and he's holding 2 dogs on Instagram. And I was like, oh my God, that's my dog. And it was this tiny little picture. And I was with my sister-in-law, and she was like, how few of him? It just looked like any dog. I was like, that is my dog. So I find out the guy's this guy in LA, and he runs a dog rescue, but he had spent 4 years in Asia undercover in dog slaughterhouses. And the worst of the worst, like places where there was a lot of intentional torture in Cambodia, China, all over the place. And I didn't even really know this. I knew it existed, but I hadn't looked at it. Like it was too. So I flew out, I meet him, and we start this kind of friendship where he's teaching me. Do you know about this? And have you been to a pig save? And so he sends me to Toronto to go to this like pig vigil where you stand outside. And I knew I was not like in the movement of any of the animal rights stuff. So I didn't know really any of it. I knew like vague, don't eat meat, don't be vegan, that kind of stuff. But I didn't know. So I go to this 24-hour, like watching pigs come in and out of a slaughterhouse. The trucks come in with the pigs and they come out empty. And the being there, seeing this, I can't tell you what it does to you. It is just, you're just like, oh, I'm up close and this is our food system. And they're babies. And it's just, and he was like, and if you want to see the worst torture for dog slaughter, go to Cambodia. So I was like, okay, go to Cambodia. And I just like, now what? And so I start talking to anybody I can find throughout the entire country who's helping dogs. And of course, the torture is horrible in Cambodia because either parents or anyone over 45 lived through torture, and anyone younger, their families, they were raised by people who lived through torture. But it was just like this set of awakenings of this is actually really what's happening. So I kept going places, and I went back to him to start the podcast because he started me on this, follow this. And that's back when we were really about, look at all the bad things happening in the world, before I kind of realized that maybe we should talk about some solutions. But and this went on for a while. It wasn't like this quick. And so that people would send me, I'd be with somebody in northern Thailand with elephants in the tourism industry. But like you hear about like how bad these things are. But when you go see the elephants that have come out of the tourism industry that were so abused and so beaten. And I had someone who took me to every kind of rescue, including the ones that were still doing a lot of damage. Seeing all of this and meeting all these people, you're just like, you can't throw a rock on the globe where there's not really bad things happening to people as well. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world. And it's much easier to walk through the world and not really look too deeply. And what he did to me was really make me not just spout off about it and know about it, but sit there and look at it and look at it and look at it until I felt like I had no choice. And so I didn't really know, what am I doing with this? And I was working, I had a whole thing going on. And I was like, I have to this is so important. And it felt like a really kind of sick gift in a sense. Oh, now you are going to have up close and person to so many like terrible things happening around the world. But it felt like the kind of gift that this was now my mission. And it felt like somebody really gave me, not him, but all the people that I met throughout this whole thing, just gave me a path. And the path keeps like opening and unveiling itself. And literally I learned it like very early on in it, just to like trust, okay, go to the next thing, show up, just show up, see what happens. And it's changed me completely since it started, because especially when it comes to helping animals. And I think when you're helping and you're like looking at our food system and you're looking at all these big things we're doing where it's billions and billions of animals, it's also, we're destroying the planet. The people that are affected by this, it's massive. So it's not just animals. It's literally every single system in the world that is hurting one thing is hurting kind of everything. And so you feel you're like, oh my God, I'm inside this now. And so that was a big one that really changed me. That was the beginning. But yeah.
What an incredible story, Beth. And it's one thing to read about these things, right, as an article. And it's another thing to see a bit of photos and some online videos, and you're already horrified. But I can only imagine like seeing it up close and it viscerally transforming you. It's thinking, oh man, this is wrong. This is so wrong. And I can appreciate how you mentioned how it's a gift, but also a very challenging gift. It's hard that you've been shown all these cruel things, but with Species Unite, with the platform you've created, sharing these campaigns and coming up with these solutions, I think it's a gift to the world that you're giving. You're rewrapping it, your experience, and re-giving out to the world. Amazing work, Beth. I love what you do, and I'll keep supporting as best as I can.
Thank you. So I'll tell you one other story that's like kind of the other side of that story. And there's a guy named Uma Valeti. Uma Valeti was a cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic. And I don't know what year, 2013, 14, somewhere in that part of the 2000s, he was injecting stem cells into a heart. And he had this thought like, wait a minute, why aren't we doing this with food? And so he started, that started a whole new world for him. And he's the founder of Upside Foods, which is a cellular agriculture company in Northern California. And it will be once it's regulated, one of the biggest in the US. And they already are making all this cellular cultivated meat, which is meat made from cells. And so we became he was on the podcast. We really liked each other. We became friends. And he called me and he said, this is now like a year and a half later. And he said, Beth, we're opening the first cultivated meat factory in the US. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah. And again, I'd been talking to the cellular agriculture people for a few years at this point. I'd talked to tons of them. I really thought I got it. I was really excited about the future of food. And I had my sister-in-law with me, and we show up at his factory, which is, once you're inside, all the walls are glass because unlike a slaughterhouse or factory farm where everything is not only hidden, but illegal to look at, everything is open. It's absolutely beautiful. And so it's just the three of us, Uma, my sister-in-law, Suki, and I. And we walk in, and I'm like standing there, and there's just gigantic, like back things, big stainless steel, like where they make all the food, make all the meat. And you're in this really clean, beautiful factory. And I punched him. I was just like, couldn't help it. And I was like, oh my God. And it was literally, I was like, this right here, I'm standing in the end of slaughterhouses and factory farming. Like it felt like I was like the kid in Willy Wonka, and I got into the chocolate factory. And being there and seeing it, I was like, there's so much hope in where we're going. And a lot of it is tech. Like, I do think tech will save us in a lot of ways, and it will save a lot of animals. But being like, it was so the other side of seeing horrible things, of just seeing the future and standing in the middle of the future. And I was literally standing there like it was a room full of rainbows. And I was in a random factory, but that was one of the best days for sure.
Wow, I can only imagine it's like a step into the future, although it's a present, but you can see how it will all turn out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you call it plant-based meats or what would you call it?
So plant-based meat is meat that as you can eat right now, like Beyond Burgers are plant-based, right? Yeah. Anything like made with stuff like plants, basically, or soy, all that is plant-based meat. Cultivated meat is meat that is made from cells. And so make cultivated meat, you take a cell, and now the way it's done is absolutely astonishing. Back in the day, it was it did involve some bad things to animals, at least a couple. Now you can literally pluck a feather from a chicken, take the cells, and make chicken nuggets. And the chicken still walks around. Like, I met this woman, she runs a pet food company called Beyond Animals, which sometime this year or early next year, they are putting their first cultivated cat treat on the market, and it's mouse treat, right? So it's mouse meat because cats actually in nature eat things like mice. So it sounds creepy, but that's what they actually eat. Right? But so they had 3 mice in their lab. They use cells from those mice. Now, every other piece of meat mouse meat they will make for this cat treats will come from cells that replicate from those cells. And the original 3 mice that they use went home as pets with one of the researchers. And so literally no animals are harmed. And that's where we are. That's how far 5 years ago, we were still using fetal bovine serum, or 7 years ago sometime, where it wasn't. Now they can literally just take a cell, and not making it sound like magic, but honestly, that's what's happening.
It is such a game changer. Seriously, that technology, we can... the thing
that the blocks that are still happening, it's going to happen. It's happening. There's 120 companies or something right now globally who are working on this. In Singapore right now, it's actually happening. There's restaurants where you can eat chicken nuggets that are made. They're fully cultivated. They come from cells. They're really expensive because the whole industry there's still a lot of steps that have to happen. Mostly in the US, we need FDA regulations, which people think is going to happen in the next year or two. Once that happens, then it'll be high-end restaurants, like super high-end, because it's going to be crazy expensive. Then high-end grocery stores. And as it scales and factories get bigger, they have to get bigger, and they need to be. We're trying to feed it's soon going to be 10 billion people, 8 billion people.
Yes.
Look how much. But the scaling will happen. It's not going to happen quickly, but once it starts, it's going to snowball.
Yeah. Speaking of cultivated foods, I listened to one of your podcasts with Omni Foods, the founder of Omni Foods.
Yeah, David.
That was such a great podcast as well. He's that whole industry without people realizing. There are documentaries out saying how bad meat is for the environment, and the cows and everything like that. But he also brought into perspective about the seafood and the water and how much it's an equally problematic issue. And they've come out with their range of Omni Foods. Actually, after I heard the podcast, I Googled it up. Where could I find this in Australia? And then it said Woolies, which is one of our kind of grocery stores. I ran out to Woolies and I couldn't find it. So I was like, damn it.
Really?
But I'll look for another place.
They were sold out.
Yeah, probably sold out.
It's crazy. First of all, it's really good. But second of all, it's blown up. Like, it's insanely popular.
Yeah, because he was saying they were using it in restaurants as well.
Some Starbucks. Yeah, in Asia. Yeah.
That's incredible. So I can't wait for all the cultivated food and plant-based meals and everything to be even more accessible, down in price.
To clarify though, he's plant-based.
Yep.
Not cultivated. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you're, from my understanding, you're a vegan. Is that correct?
I am a vegan.
Yes, you're a vegan. Yeah. And as a vegan and helping people become more conscious about it, what are some of the best or stickiest ways you've seen to help people adopt a more vegan diet or green diet, to say?
Good food. That's the other, everything. You just got to go positives and you got to go solutions. Learn that the hard. You can't, if you're with someone who has eaten meat their whole life and doesn't really think anything about it except, and you're like, do you know where your meat came from? First of all, you're a jerk. Like, you're not operating against, this is conditioning and it's what people have done forever and it's traditions. And so you're not like, you can't talk somebody out of all that stuff, but you can show them other ways of doing it. I think the two big ways and I'm not talking about like vegan curious people, that's different. If they're already curious, they're really easy. You can tell them anything. But if they're not curious, two ways to really get them are, one is good food, which now there's so much, even just since I've been vegan, the difference in what is out there. And I live in New York, so we have we have insane vegan restaurants that, like, I'm sure if you go in and ask, and they're all packed, half the restaurant, or probably 75%, is not vegan, but people love to go get vegan food now. So that's a really easy way in. And the line you always get as well, if I could eat like this, I'd be vegan. And I'm like, it's changed a lot since the 70s. You don't have to eat. But the other way, and we don't focus on this enough at Species Unite, and we don't have the bandwidth to, like right now, and we should though, is health. And not health like health in the future, because especially in the US, because people don't seem to like connect that what you do now affects the rest of your life very well, because our whole system doesn't do that. We're not preventative. But health in the sense of, look at this guy I know just went vegan 2 months ago and he lost 20 pounds. Like, that really gets people. It sounds terrible, but it works. And so we do this vegan challenge every October, a 30-day challenge. And because we have a super diverse audience in terms of how people eat and where they come from. And a lot of our audience, the majority, is not vegan. And so a lot of it, like, one of my brothers has his entire desk and his hedge fund do our vegan challenge every October. And that's the rule. They all have to do it. And so these are guys who like go to steakhouses 3 nights a week. But boom, someone loses 20 pounds or 10 pounds. And then everyone's like, I can't wait for the vegan challenge. And they're all excited about it now. We still have a month. And so you just got to keep planting seeds, because trying to convert somebody who doesn't want to be converted is stupid. It just doesn't, there's no point. It doesn't work. And also, enough people are curious and want to try a little bit that the world's shifting. It is shifting. And the other thing is, like, kids, like youth are so much different now and so much more aware and so much smarter, that them informing their parents is golden. So that's big as well.
Yeah, I love how aware you are about all of this, because obviously due to your experience and your experimentations, but it's to scream at someone and just about all the bad things that are happening around the world, that doesn't work. Yeah. And then you have to come up with solutions, and coming up, as you shared, the health benefits is a solution. Making it tasty is like it helps them adopt it because they think, oh, vegan food can taste this good. My godmother, she's a vegan, and every time we catch up, she takes me to all these amazing vegan restaurants. And I'm like, oh, mom, this is so good. This is so good. And she's 60, she's 63 this year, and she's amazing. Like her skin's amazing. She looks very fit. She's very healthy. She works on her feet all day, but she's very energetic for her age, and clearly the health benefits are there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell people it's because we don't have death, but it's true. The health benefits, not if you eat, you can eat really unhealthy as a vegan as well. And a lot of people do. But if you eat fairly healthy as a vegan, you're pretty healthy. You don't have, I still eat French fries, but for the most part, I try to eat. And the funny thing is for vegan like we have such good vegan restaurants in New York. But it's either go because I'm bringing non-vegans, and so it's like your godmother bringing you, or like a vegan's in town and they're all excited because they don't live somewhere with New York where there's so many great places, variety of such great places. But for the most part, I don't eat at a lot of vegan restaurants because like in my regular everyday life, because I eat healthier at a non-vegan restaurant where you're like, oh, I'll just have the salad and the side of spinach. And because at vegan restaurants, there's so many like good options that.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I get you. Also, with restaurants, seasoning they tend to overkill.
Yeah.
You don't realize how much salt or how much sugar and the other stuff. Yeah. It tastes amazing, obviously, but it's different to a homemade meal.
It's totally my regular, like in real life, I mostly eat like a lot of vegetables, tofu, and some French fries. But mostly I bet a lot of vegetables and tofu. But like going out, I'm like, oh, the vegan burrito. Oh, the vegan this part. It's not that healthy, but it's exciting and fun and delicious. Yeah.
And I love the 30-day challenge. I think, and as you were mentioning the 30-day challenge, I was like, oh, that's so strategic. It's right before summer. People can get ripped before summer, show off their summer bodies. But then I was thinking, wait, in the US, that's winter.
So,
right before winter.
The reason we do it in October is because in the US, I don't know about school there, but school starts in September because everyone's been conditioned since they were 6 that it's like a new you, September. And by October, most people have failed with that. And so it's like this fresh start. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
It gets them back on track. Like weight loss is generally a lot of people's use resolution.
a lot of people come to it because of that. But the trick is you still have to eat fairly healthy.
It's a great hook and get them in.
Yeah.
Let's talk vegan beauty products and fashion. I know that you're also an advocate for that. I don't know too much about it, but I've been seeing it more and more companies moving into that sector. Can you share some insights into that industry? Or
beauty products, I'll just tell you my quick thoughts on it because it's not nearly as it's interesting, trust me, but it's not to what we're doing. It's not really, we don't go into it that deeply. Because if you were to create a new company right now in 2022 and you weren't vegan or you tested on animals on purpose, it's not very wise. Like aside from whether you like them or not, because you don't need to test on animals for beauty products in the majority of the world except China at this point. And why would you put animal products in when so many companies are selling things called cruelty-free or vegan? So I don't know the numbers on this and I could be totally wrong, but most beauty products at this point in the game, I'm sure it's most, that still are like really, they use animal products and they test and are the older ones. And some of them are very like expensive older ones, but it's not anybody, especially like any celebrity who's creating a new line of beauty products, always it's going to be vegan and cruelty-free. So it's almost built in now. That's just the way it's going. And so it doesn't feel as much like you need to fight. You need to fight for laws in certain places that are making you do it, but you don't really need to fight the system in the same way because it's happening. Fashion is a different story. I'm actually as excited about not just fashion, but all materials as I am about food and the future, like where it's going in the future. And it's very similar. Fashion and cars, like automotive industry and home goods, which uses an amazing amount of animals, are all shifting and will shift in the next decade massively toward 100% animal free, not because they're all like animals, but because of the environment and they have no choice. And so let's say it's similar to food in the sense that the scaling isn't there, but once the scaling starts in fashion, it's going to happen a lot faster. because there's no regulations. There's no FDA to get through. There's none of this stuff. So the scaling has to go up and the quality has to go up. But already with what's happening with like mycelium and apple leather, it's starting, but it's still small. And then they're also going to be cell leather. So leather made from cells. And once that's scaled, it'll be massive. So every car will be vegan sometime in not that far from now, probably the next decade, I hope. But so that's exciting as can be. And the thing is, it's already sneaking into the demand. Like I just got an email from like a higher end clothing company that literally was selling fur a couple of years ago. And it was like, our vegan leathers for fall. And it's not like a vegan company. It's a super, and that's starting to, you're seeing that all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's not such a hard sell. And 5 years ago, I would tell people my shoes are vegan or my boots are vegan. Every time anyone likes, any of my shoes or bags, I'm like, it's vegan, it's vegan, it's vegan. Not because, but because so they know that they can do vegan too, right?
Yes.
People would look a little funny 5 years ago, 7 years ago. Now people are like, where'd you get it? And no, it's changed. It's changing quickly. And I'm so excited about it. Like I'm beyond excited about it.
Thank you for sharing that, Beth. It was a good insight into both those industries. I've just seen a whole lot move into that space, but I wasn't too sure of what was happening there. But it makes a lot of sense that they all should and will move over into that space sooner or later.
Yeah. And they will. They're going to. And they want to.
Yeah.
The big thing is they want to. And so they're literally like, give us the stuff, give us the stuff. But the stuff's not scaled yet. And it's not. It's getting there.
Yeah. More of a tech issue.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Let's switch gears a little. Let's talk meditation.
Okay.
I know you're a big proponent of meditation. You co-authored with your sister-in-law the book Just Sit, Meditation for Those That Should But Don't. Is that the title?
It's meditation. It's a meditation guidebook for those who know they should, but don't. Which is pretty much everybody we knew at the time, or probably still now.
I love the title. Let's say, that's before we get into that. Let's hear your story. How did you get into meditation?
Really, it's my sister-in-law. Her name is Suki, and she's married to one of my brothers. I have many siblings, and we're all really close, and we all live in New York and see each other all the time. But so Suki, this is like 15 more years ago, 17 years ago, something like that. Suki had been on a meditation retreat and she came back. And like a few months later, she was like, I want to go back. And it was with these monks and it was in Fiji and it was but they're monks from India. And she was like, you need to come with me. And at the time, I still drink coffee like crazy, but I also smoke cigarettes like crazy. And she told me, but you can't, there's no coffee there and you can't smoke. And I was like, I'm not going. And she was like, oh, you need to come with me. You need to come with me. And I was like, I was in terror of going to this thing. I didn't even think about the meditation part because I was so stressed out that I was like, you rather smoke and drink coffee. I was like, what am I going to do? We weren't going to like an ashram. It was like, it's Fiji. Of course there's coffee. And of course I can go hide outside and smoke a cigarette. But I didn't know. But it kept me in this place where I didn't even think about or question the meditation part. So I got there. So I was so stressed about the stupid smoking. Then I get there, I realize, oh, there's actually coffee. And now I'm like, oh shit, now I have to meditate. And so these monks were incredible. And they literally like sat with us and really taught us not just how to meditate, but everything about meditation. And we spent 10 days with them, super immersed. And not only meditated a lot the whole time and started seeing a little bit of, oh, this is cool. But I think, and it was great. And while we were in that bubble, it was amazing. And it was weirdly really fun as well. We laughed a lot. But then we came back to life in New York and 3 weeks later, we never went. And that was how meditation went for me for the first few years. But I would tell everybody else to do it. I'd be like, no, you should be meditating. It'll change your life. And then we had this company and we had this website and daily email and it was all about wellness. And it was like kale and yoga and meditation. And people were writing us all the time about meditation and about kale and all this other stuff. And when we shut it down, we both were like, we talked such a big game about meditation. And now at this time, we'd been on maybe 10 retreats or 8 retreats or something. And we'd meditate here and there. And we'd go to like events in New York. But we really didn't have a meditation practice. And so we decided we're going to shut this down. We're going to really do a deep dive into meditation and figure out like next steps, something with meditation. And so we really did a deep dive, and we were like in India, and we were with Ram Dass in Hawaii. And we went all over the place to like learn. What do you have to teach? What can we learn from you? What can we learn from you? And then we get back to New York. And once we got back to New York, she made me, I wasn't really that psyched about it, to be honest, sit every day, twice a day, 20 minutes each time. And I don't know if I would have been that disciplined in the beginning to do that by myself. I don't. She literally forced me, said, you have to do this because this is like a project we're working right now. And all the retreats and all that was like beautiful and lovely. And I'm glad we did it, but it really didn't, again, change much. But once we started sitting every day, twice a day, just like randomly in an office where it wasn't very pretty and it was just all of a sudden, like all the kind of things people tell you, like why you should meditate and it transforms you and your life will change. It was literally like this armor that I'd been wearing for decades just started coming off of me. It's armor that I thought was actually part of my body. So I didn't even know it needed to come off or could come off. And it opened me up. And the weirdest part is a lot of weird things happened during this day. But one of them is one night I was at my place and I had a balcony and I was outside smoking because I smoked. And I smoked a lot, but I was like, you know what? I'm looking at a cigarette and I was like, I think you're done. And I put it out and I woke up the next morning and this is what I did every morning for 20 years. So I was like, I'm going to go have a cigarette. And this other voice of me went, oh no, you don't smoke. Okay. And so I went and made coffee and nanoseconds, I'm going to have a cigarette. No, you don't smoke. And for 4 days, that was it. I'm going to have a cigarette. No, you don't smoke. I had zero real withdrawals. I had zero bad mood, anger, sadness, all the things that are, and the cigarettes just fell off of me like the armor. And I never smoked. That was it. I was done.
Wow,
and I had never gone a day without a cigarette since I'd been 16 or 17 or something. Yeah. And that was the kind of stuff. So we were like, oh shit. And but we were so disciplined. But we didn't have expectations because we didn't even know what could happen. Our expectations were that we'd be a little nicer or all the kind of vague type things. And stuff like that started happening. And that's why we wrote Just Said, because we were like, everyone we know should be doing this. And it's free and it's not hard. It's 100% not hard to meditate. It's just hard to show up every day and get yourself to do it. And you don't actually know what the real benefits until you experience them, right? So it's not like the gym. Everyone always says it's like the gym. It's not. If you go to the gym every day, you will look different. You can make a difference in your body. You can lose weight or get muscle or whatever you're there for, right? Meditation is so much inner psychological stuff happened where things that I just thought were Beth, they were my personality. That's who I was since I was born. No, that's who I was because when I was 14, this happened. And look, I can just take that piece of armor off, or I can just be more open or more vulnerable. But it was astonishing and really life-changing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Move aside nicotine patches. You prescribe meditation.
I'm telling you.
It's much better.
And I do think that people would meditate twice a day, every day, stuff like that. Because all of a sudden, the reason I know this, but the reason it made quitting smoking it was almost like nothing was instead of being attached to the cigarette, I could watch and observe the addiction. And so I was just like, oh no, that's the addiction. That's the addiction. And so it was no longer me. And for 20 years, that was part of me too. And now it was just oh, I'm just observing an addiction, which is pretty amazing.
It's incredible. It's the whole meta view of yourself and your behavior and personality. You can observe that, but that's not you, and you can just zoom back.
And I think when people are like, "Oh, meditation's a superpower," yeah, if you do it, it is that because it does, because that's what happens. And so all of a sudden, you're walking in the world totally differently. And there is a superpower element to it.
That's a solid effort, Beth. 2 sessions of 20 minutes a day.
Oh, it's tough.
That's a strong meditation practice.
That was a year. And now it's 20 minutes a day. The afternoon sessions fell off at some point. But the two, I recommend the two. One is still really good. But I should do too, but I'm really good. I'm really good at everything in the morning. Like I do a lot of that kind of stuff in the morning, and I just did. But in the afternoon, it's tough.
Yeah. So it takes up quite a bit of time. And since we're on the topic of discipline with meditation, and yes, meditation is a lot more mainstream now. A lot more people are into it. They're getting into it. But like a lot of people, ourselves included, you jump on the wagon and then you get off, on and off. With your experience and your network, do you have any suggestions for people who know that they should, but don't?
Yeah. So we wrote this book, and then we were supposed to go on a book tour, and we went and did a couple of places, and I was like, it wasn't great. And so I suggested instead, why don't we go places where people don't think meditation is accessible to them, even though obviously it's accessible to everyone on the planet. But there's still a ton of, this will lead me up to your question. So instead of doing book tour, we went to schools and prisons and domestic violence shelters, places where people just, at the time especially, but now still, it's where it kind of always seems like, oh, that's for them, not us. I did workshops and talks and teaching and doing this as well as the book where we were like, all our friends. Look, if you meditate, right? The discipline part is the hard part, like I said. So we'd go and we'd give talks. And so we were learning a ton from all the people we were talking to about the why. And there's so many reasons why 20 minutes a day is impossible. Although most people have 20 minutes a day for Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, and they certainly have it for Netflix. And it's really about how you want to value your 20 minutes. But our thing was, and it's like this, it's similar to the vegan stuff and the animal stuff. Our thing was, we need to make this even more accessible. Like I think the easier you can make it for people to show up, the more chances you have of people showing up. And so broaden it. And so we were giving a talk in Attica, which is a really large and not very great prison in New York, way upstate. And we were doing this workshop, and it was wardens and it was incarcerated guys, and it was this big mix, and it was a TEDx. So it was a big mix of who was there. And afterward, this guy came up to us and said, why aren't you guys doing virtual reality? And we were like, because we don't even think you should use your phone as a timer when it comes to meditation. We are like so anti-tech. And he was like, no, this should be virtual reality. And we were and it was like one of those things where we're like, no, absolutely not. And the next day he came to our office and he brought 2 headsets. And he was like, just put these on. And he did. And we were like, oh my God. Because, and I think it's like anything now, it's a big cheat in a way, but whatever can get you to sit and get there, all of a sudden you have this headset on and you can't touch your phone because you got the things in your hands and your headset on. So that's a huge plus right there. You are thrown into the present because your brain's trying to figure out where it is in time and space. And so you can't really ruminate, especially early days in VR. When VR is fairly new to you, but rumination is not really a thing in VR, right? You're feeding all these things that are just automatic deal breakers for so many people when they try to get to like day 3. They're like, oh, I can't do this. I can't sit still. So many people tell me, no, I really can't sit still. I'm like, you can sit still. You like watch TV. You know how to sit still. You just need to be entertained. So there is a bit of an entertainment element to it because it's beautiful and it's gamified. But then you go into the meditations and you're meditating, right? And on some level, and whether these people the people that are using it are finding it and this is working for them, that this is the way they meditate for the rest of their life, or it's like training wheels to hopefully maybe at some point they'll be meditating like alone and with nothing. That became our next mission. How do we get people to show up? We're not really meditation teachers, and we're not like, go see someone who's really studied this their whole lives if you want like a real, our whole job became, how do we get people to do it? Like, how do we get them to show up? That was it. We're just bringing the horses to water. You know what I mean? And this whole virtual reality world, which we've been in for the past 3 years, is really an incredible way. It's just like one more way, but it's been really fun as a way to get people there.
Such an interesting story and fascinating how that came out of your trip to a prison.
Yeah.
And somebody coming out was like, have a VR, and you guys were so anti-tech, and then coming out was okay, all right, maybe this is the way.
And then literally like 3 years we've been like in VR world and tech world, and we're just like, who are we? But it's fun. And that's part of the same with the dog in Thailand. It's the same thing of just like, if something feels right, and to just keep blindly trusting a little bit, like just go to the next thing and see what happens. Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Just have a leap of faith and give it a go and see where it takes you.
Yeah.
And that's what, hearing your stories, I think that's what one of the things I love so much about you, Beth, is that you have the courage. Like when you were saying, when the gentleman was asking you to go to Cambodia and see the dogs, you're like, yeah, okay. Okay. And you just rocked up, okay, what do I do now? But that led you to build upon your mission and gave you the clarity of direction where you needed to go. And here you are making a massive impact in the world. Anyway, back to the meditation piece. So this whole VR meditation is related to Maloka. Is that how you pronounce it?
So Maloka is the game in Meta, but it's also, so that's like the main attraction. And it's still, version 1 we released in December, and it's still changing, and there'll be another version in early 23 and growing. And now we've been adding like all the all-stars of meditation are doing programs in there. So you can meditate with Deepak Chopra or Sharon Salzberg or the Big Quiet. So everybody's like coming to the party. And so it's really cool and really fun. And it just keeps expanding. And the game's going to expand as well. So there's a little more game to the game. So it's pretty awesome. This is not where we started at all. And it's that same thing. It just keeps like expanding. And so that's the main gig. And then there's also, we have a phone app that will also change in the next year. But it was originally just to accompany the VR. Now it can just be used on its own as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do believe that's the direction that we're moving. And I think it's a very good move on your part to move into the VR meditation space. It's the VR headsets are growing more, and you've probably heard of the whole the whole metaverse. It's everything. Everyone's building in that space as well for the future. Like it's not coming next year or right now, but the onboarding is happening. There's no doubt about that. And having a head start in that space and with the apps, and we're having these all-stars come in, that's an amazing experience that people can get. But going a little bit deeper with that, I joined the Maloka Discord channel, and like the community is amazing. Yeah. I was like, I so enjoyed that meditation session. I loved it. And I was like, wow, there's a really engaged community.
Yeah.
It's not just...
We do. We totally do.
It's not just tune in and, hey, okay, yeah, it's great meditation and I'm back into my world. No,
and people go to the meditations every day. Like, it's been fantastic. It's surprising that so many people are into it and very into it.
Yeah. I'm curious, how did you foster such a community in the meditation space, or is it an organic thing that happens from the gamification into a digital Discord app?
It was a little bit of everything, both of what you just said. And we have a guy named Monish that works he's the Discord. He's everything on that side of Maloka. And he did an amazing job of building this community. And
that's the thing, like with those kind of things, you need a community manager.
Yeah.
You need someone solid who knows what they're doing. Yeah. It's too much to handle. Like for you guys, you're going to stretch yourself too much to try to get into that. Anyway, let's move on to... All right, we're reaching almost the tail end. So one more question, and we'll just do some quick fire questions. Beth, you're doing amazing work globally. I think your projects impact on a global scale in every way that you do it, from the meditation, Maloka to Species Unite. I also saw from my research your family, a whole bunch of high outputters, not just yourself, but everyone.
Yeah.
And so my curiosity is, do you think that it's part of the family upbringing together that has moved that?
So I'm one of 7, and we grew up with parents who, like, we still see my parents. I'm right now at the beach, and most of my siblings are out here, and so are my parents, somewhere within 2 miles of where I am. And everyone lives in New York, and so there's a big closeness, which plays a role. But with my parents and with us growing up, and we did not grow up. My dad was in the army, and they had 7 kids, and so they had no money. But we were constantly told how privileged we were and that we had to give back. And like, when you have this much, your responsibility. And we did, compared to a lot of the world, we did. But compared in our world, it's not like we could buy anything or do anything. 7 kids shared a bathroom. And so we didn't grow up like wealthy, but we grew up wealthy in the global standards. And so there was this very much like almost religion behind my parents about giving back, showing up, and being grateful. And it was so like embedded into like how you have to be in the world. That's everyone got some of it or a lot of it, and that it became like that was, you just thought that's what you were supposed to do or how you were supposed to be. And so it wasn't so much like you had to change what, like it was just there.
Yeah. It's a beautiful blueprint. Your family's given you, like giving, being giving, showing up. And with so many siblings, you encourage each other. And you've mentioned that you're quite close to your siblings as well.
Yeah.
And you're all living in New York and you guys all can kind of support each other. It's amazing. I come from a family of my brother, my sister, single mom, 3 kids. And I don't know what it is, but even with such a small family, it's been very hard for us to stay close. And it's always been something I find, I don't understand why. I was like, this family's out there is so huge and they can stick so close together. And sometimes I speak to my mother, I'm like, Mum, there's only 4 of us in the world. And even we can't stick close together sometimes. And it's sad sometimes.
I think some of it with us was literally my mom would just say these crazy things to us our entire lives. But if you were like in a fight with one of your siblings, she would be like, that is one of the only people that is going to love you for the rest of your life. It's kind of crazy, like threats. And you just believed it because you've been hearing it since you were 4. No one. And so you're like, it was just in your DNA that like, oh, this is my person for life. Because it was forced down your throat a little bit, but it worked. Yeah. And I don't think it was just, I literally think she orchestrated a lot of it. It wasn't, and she grew up single mom, couple kids, and lonely, very lonely. And so I think she was like, I am going to create this like little structure of these kids who are going to stick. Like, I think a lot of it was really intentional. It didn't just happen accidentally.
Yeah, I think single moms, some of the strongest people in the world.
Oh, they're amazing.
I don't know how they do it, but they're just incredible. The grit and strength and the vision that they have for the kids.
Yeah.
Go mums.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Beth, we're reaching the tail end of our conversation here. I just have a couple of quick questions that I always ask my guests.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite book you'd recommend?
I have so many favorite books. How about, can I change the question?
Yeah, sure.
My favorite book I've read recently, because literally I've had so many favorite, I'm a big reader.
Sure.
I had so many favorite books, but I just read The Island of Missing Trees by Leif Shaddock, which is this incredible storytelling where even the trees talk. And that was, but like probably once a month, there's a book that I was telling everybody they should read that it just, and then I forget maybe about the next book. So I don't have a favorite.
That's fine. That's just something I'll definitely look into. Do you share anywhere in the public your favorite book of the month or anything?
No, I did though, because I read a lot and I give books to people. That's my thing. Like all my friends, I like show up to meet them. I almost like prescribe them. Oh, you need to. Whether it's fiction, nonfiction, I'm like, like Warren Ellis, who was on the podcast, he wrote this book, Nina Simone's Gum. I probably bought it for 9 people after I read it. And people who I knew like when I was in university, because it brought me back to such like a way of thinking that these were the people I was surrounded by when my framework more like that kind of thing. Like that's my thing is giving books, but I should. So like you said, I should do that. Maybe we will.
Okay. Yeah. Beth, are there any new beliefs or behaviors that have had a positive impact in your life in the recent years?
There's a couple. One, but I'll just give you one. And it's a little, I shouldn't call this goofy, but it feels goofy. At the beginning of the pandemic, when stuff was super locked down. And so like for the first 3 months of you guys were locked down a lot longer and a lot more seriously than we were. But in New York, it was the first 3 months and then everything opened here and there. So that was the only time it really felt super. I was at home, and I was one of those people whose dog got walked a lot more than it was used to. And she gets out all the time. But so I just read a book that kind of made me think about doing this. But I started doing this thing every day and I live in Brooklyn and I don't live in I live in Williamsburg, which is not pretty. And so of noticing beauty. And then in noticing, so that was my thing. I had to notice 10 beautiful things. And it could be like a weed. It could be basically with any nature, a tree, a flower. And with each thing I would notice, I would be grateful for something. And it was just kind of like one of these, it started in the beginning of the pandemic. And then I changed it a little. That first, you just notice 10 things and you're just grateful. And then you have 10 things. Then you notice 10 more. And they're specific. Again, it was one of those things that I didn't realize how much that would affect me. It changed me. And I still do it. And it's now been like 2.5 years. Every day. I don't think I miss one day. But that's part of when I walk my dog in the morning. And so people always say you should have a gratitude practice. And for some reason, that was like one of those things that always felt cheesy to me. Just the word. I was like, but they're right. Like a gratitude practice, you only start seeing what's good in your life. You stop looking at what's missing or what's not working or and it changes your brain. And it really does. And so that was a huge one.
That's a different one. As you said, everyone recommends a gratitude practice, and absolutely rewires your brain. But to go out on a walk and to notice 10 different things and be grateful for that, I think it's different to at the end of the night kind of thinking past on your day, what are you grateful for? I think that's it's a different practice. I haven't heard of that one.
I made it up. But I would notice each thing, but then with that, be grateful for something that was happening or a person but it had to be 10 people or 10 things or 10, just because I'm like, everything else, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah.
I recommend making up your own, but it works. I mean, I don't just expect anything back again. Like, why would you? But it really rewires your brain.
Yeah. If you could only send one single line of SMS text to yourself 5 years ago, what would it be?
It would be any of these things I just talked about. Do this gratitude thing. Like these things that really, why do we resist them? Like for me, and I'm like someone who's been so immersed in the wellness world for 20 years and meditation world and all these worlds. And I was still like, it just seemed goofy to me. And it's so the opposite. It is so like life-changing.
Yeah.
So any of those kind of practices should do it sooner.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. And finally, Beth, how can people reach out or learn more about everything that you do?
So speciesunite.com, playmaloka.com, or write me, Elizabeth at Species Unite.
Beth, thank you so much again for your time. It's been a lovely conversation with you. I love listening to your inspiring stories. You've got great energy. Had so much laughing in this one, listening to you. Thank you for all that you do with Species Unite. I was working on some campaigns with you, and I love working with your company. And I'd love to continue to do so for many years to come.
I hope so. I'm glad we're friends, and I'm glad we're collaborating. Thank you, Kevin. You're awesome.
Beth, if you're ever in Australia, hit me up.
I will be.
I'll take you out.
All right, I will. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the show. All the links to the show notes will be available at kevinleesocial.com, spelled KEVINLY. Conversely, if you have any interviews that you'd love to recommend, please send it over to kevinleesocial@gmail.com. I'd love to connect. Thank you. Until the next episode.